Oh, bigger.
Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order with that code FNP at simbody.com. You're really, really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it. And a big-time episode of Fight Night Picks Kicks coming up today with UFC 269. Head on over to the website if you haven't already, fightnightpicks.com. All sorts of great stuff over there. Podcasts, full episodes of the previews and predictions, as well as our own Joshua Hart's full card betting guide. What's he feeling? Costa, Ige, Muniz? What are you saying? Joshua Hart over there on the website. You can also check out the store, and I have it on authority. A little birdie told me that Craig Allen's going to be wearing that gray Fight Night Picks logo t-shirt that you can check out over on the website. It's fightnightpicks.com. You know it, you love it, you got to check it out. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
And here we are. We're set. We're ready for UFC 269. As always, one half. You're hosting to Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen and FNP. And listen, I wasn't very active, Matt, this week parce que j'étais au Québec. C'est tout en français. Puis c'est la première fois que moi j'ai parlé en anglais toute la semaine. Man, donc, Matt, this is going to be a big-time card. 269, absolutely bonkers. You have two title fights up at the top. The prelims are absolutely loaded.
They are.
Two of my favorite fights are really at the end of the prelims, so to speak. But, Matt, I absolutely love this one top to bottom. And straight up, it was unfortunate that we lost Perez and Schnell, because I was excited for that one too.
Exactly, that was one of the better fights on this card, but the great news is that this is still one of the cards of the year. Like, by the time this pay-per-view is over and we look back on it and say, hey, that was the best pay-per-view of the year, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I don't think you would either. There's so many great cards, and this is how you can tell and sort of judge a pay-per-view and just how good it is. If the prelims could be a really good fight night card by themselves, then it's probably going to be a great pay-per-view, and that's exactly what we have tonight.
Matt, I absolutely love it, and I'm so glad that everybody can join us over there in the comments section. You guys drive this entire show, and if you can, make sure you vote for the winner right now, Matt. It looks like Charles Oliveira has the lead in the votes. I threw it out there on Instagram. We're going to reference that for the show at Fight Night Picks. As always, I throw it out there in the stories. I did it a little different this week. I just threw out the thumbnails for the videos instead of those one-up pictures that you have right there in front of you. But Matt, over there, we've got Waji Omar saying, I talked to Matt on IG. He's humble, dude. Well, good for you. Good for you. Good to hear that. Matt Simone apparently made custom tees with her faces on them.
Hoo-wee.
That's interesting. Clay is hanging out as well as Alex. We're going to do our best to get over at everybody that's over there. Bout Better's having a good time talking about Joey's pick. Joey Fatone. I don't know Joey, Matt.
I don't know either.
But Matt, my favorite part of the show, not so much, but let's throw it on over to our Fight of the Night screen, as always presented by Manscaped. Check them out. Listen, you can get their 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. Hear that? There's metal.
Do you like body wash? Because they have some of that too.
You got to find some of that stuff over there at manscaped.com. Use promo code FNP. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping. Favorite Ninja Turtle, Matt?
Donatello,
Raphael, and with Sean McMinn hitting us up in the super chat as well. We definitely appreciate you. Let's throw it on over to our Fight of the Night screen.
Let us know down below in the comment section who you've got. It's time for the Fight of the Night with Fight Night Picks.
All right, Matt, we're talking Fight of the Night, and we could be wrong on this one. I want to hear from everybody over there in that comment section. I mean, P is saying, thanks for all the coverage, boys. best way to get pumped for the fights to come. Let's get into it, Matt.
Thank you.
These two guys right here are fired the F up, but the guy that's on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'm not talking about you, Matt, I'm talking about Cody Garbrandt. He's getting the significant amount of media coverage coming into this fight, but now he's making his first stop at 125 pounds. Stepped on the scale successfully. Now, obviously, with this graphic, we still have 135.5, but he was in at 126. You love to see it. What are you saying for this one? Because I think these guys are just going to throw right down.
It's always a big story when you have a former champion who goes on a bit of a skid and then they make that decision. Okay, I'm going to leave this weight class and join another one, be it up or down. It really is a defining moment in their career. You can either be like Jose Aldo, who I guess he lost his debut at bantamweight, but you get the idea. He had a very competitive performance. He's looked really good ever since. Or, and we've seen it on numerous amount of occasions, you change weight like Renan Barão perhaps, and the wheels just kind of fall off the wagon immediately. So this is a big opportunity for Cody. I will say this. I think he looked pretty good on the scales, at least better than what we've seen some former bantamweights look down at 125 pounds. TJ Dillashaw, of course, being the first guy who comes to mind, but I really do think this is going to be a great fight. I was excited about this fight at the start of the week, but I'm even more excited now, knowing that Cody Garbrandt had a pretty good weight cut, and that we're going to get a good version of him tonight.
Cody looks like he wants to fight Sean O'Malley, and Sean O'Malley looks like he wants to fight anybody but Paiva, so it's really weird coming into this one. And Sean hitting us up in the super chat, appreciate that.
Thank
Sean
you.
saying War, Kai Care France, and War Muniz. And I said anybody who bets on Muniz is a goop ball. We'll see what I have coming up on that later, Matt.
Okay.
But Matt, we'll go to our second pick for fight of the night.
Ooh.
Pedro Munoz, Dominic Cruz. This is one that fell under the radar with the Fight Night Picks fans as far as the views, as far as the commenters. Not a lot of people focusing on this fight other than the fact that Dominic Cruz had his war of the media words with DC. Then they had their little kind of, I don't know, across the table scuffle that turned into a Michael Bisping video. It was just
I was
really
just saying
weird.
that Michael Bisping's friends with everyone.
But again, Pedro Munoz kind of overlooked in this spot, and I was really surprised. He's got a great shot coming up tonight.
He really does, and it's weird. It feels like Munoz, at a certain point in his career, started getting the respect he deserved. He was on a pretty long winning streak. He was getting main event slots, of course. He fought Frank Edgar in that great 5-round fight, but he loses that close decision. I know we've talked about this a lot, just how close that decision was. And then, it's sort of slowed down for him. I know he's a little bit older, especially down at bantamweight, but he still puts on really fun fights. There's never a boring Pedro Munoz fight, and the same thing has to be said for Dominic Cruz. The question is going to be, what version of Cruz are we going to get? Is he going to be able to A, accept leg kicks, B, move out of the way of them, and just sort of patter his way to a win? Because no matter who you think is going to win this fight, the more likely to win by finish is definitely Pedro Munoz. He's heavy-handed, He's got great submissions, I know. Because Dominic Cruz, for as good and for as dominant, and he's not on the Mount Rushmore of MMA fighters, but I would say he is an all-time great in this sport. He doesn't have the greatest finishing ability. He's a great wrestler. He's a great volume striker. I think this will be a phenomenal fight, but it really is two contrasting styles.
Justin Franks hitting us up in the super chat, as he seems to do every week.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
Justin.
that. Let's get into it. And Matt, I'm really looking forward to this card
yeah.
overall. We'll flip back over to our normal view. And if you know us with Fight Night Picks, you know we're going to go from the bottom of the card all the way up to the top. We're going to reference those votes over at Fight Night Picks. We'll talk a little bit about the odds. There will be a question mark kicks parlay, as there has been lately. And listen, Matt, over in the comments section, I mean, realistically, Adnan is saying I like the odds of all the fights in this card. Unless the Russian cards, which are just crazy, I guess. Matt and XO saying Charles third round submission. That's going to be a great fight. So, Matt, let's throw it on to the bottom of this card, and we'll really talk about this one in great detail because Priscila Cachoeira, what are you doing? You coming in at 129. I mean, she's almost halfway, almost. Between the flyweight and the bantamweight division. She comes in 3 pounds over the limit for this weight class, and it's very unfortunate. I mean, for Cachoeira, this is one of those spots where is the cardio going to fade due to a poor weight cut? Is it going to increase? Is her takedown defense going to be better than her career average, which is in the 60s? And will it affect her punching power? Because, Matt, when we talked about this fight at the start of the week, we both felt, and we were split on the pick, we'll say that right now, but we both felt like this fight was kind of lined odd because Cachoeira's on a knockout streak, 2-fight win streak. Gillian Robertson's on a losing streak, albeit against way better competition.
Exactly.
The weird thing is, though, again, Robertson opened like a minus 300 at the start of the week. We'll update those odds. But again, it felt like Cachoeira was being disrespected. But listen, it's hard to show respect if you're going to miss weight like that.
Exactly. And this is something we talk about all the time. When you miss weight, it normally points to something happening in your camp. Like, if everything's going great, you're not injured, you're training really hard, your nutrition's on point, you're probably not missing weight by 4 pounds, right? Like, that makes sense to me. 3, but you get the idea. The thing about Cachoeira, and no one's going to like what I'm about to say, I think this is one of those fights where the weight miss might actually help her more than hurt her. I just think everything's going to be even more on the extremes than it already was. Yes, it's going to hurt her cardio worse than her cardio already is, but I think it might help her power slightly more than she already is. Like, all of the holes are still going to be there, and they might even be bigger, but her strengths might shine through even more. This is a really hard fight to pick, though, because Cachoeira has nothing on the mat, like, at all. Nothing defensively. She's not great offensively off her back. She can kind of work her way up to her feet just because she is quite physically strong for the weight division, but it's not like she's using great finesse off her back to get underhooks or anything. The flip side, though, is that Robertson's striking is not good at all. Like, the Macy Barber stoppage was just her eating hooks on the feet.
And it's not getting better when you're not at ATT.
Exactly. And we've talked about this with some fighters. Like, Colby Covington is so talented that no matter where he trains, he's probably going to be really good. And yes, going to a smaller gym might help you with some personalized training, but if you are one of these top-tier fighters, like, I'm pretty sure Dustin Poirier and Santiago Ponzinibbio get as much personalized training as they want at American Top Team because they are world-class fighters. They're in the top 15, and I think if Robertson did progress a little bit more earlier on in her career, maybe she would have been able to break through slightly more and maybe establish herself more in the gym. I just find this fight really hard to pick because I'm not one to, I'm going to pick the underdog because I don't like where the odds are, but for where the odds are, Cachoeira isn't a terrible pick, but I do think I'm going to have to switch my pick, mainly because of the weight miss. But I am right on the edge about this fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you could be on either side. We haven't really heard from too many people over there in the comments section. Who are you picking this one? Seriously, all things aside, let's know who you have for a pick. Because, again, if you look at the stat line for Cachoeira, and these are just total strikes, but again, you talk about level of competition. Valentina outstruck her 230-3.
I mean, that cost a man his job, Craig.
Molly McCann outstruck her 110-77, and then Luana Carolina outstruck her 126-69. You're not going to get that out of Robertson. Robertson's going to attack those takedowns. She's going to go and try and go for some of those unorthodox, maybe like the body lock takedown, the trip takedown, like just some odd ones that you don't see every day. If you look at it for Robertson, open to minus 300. She's minus 361 right now. That one is milked. That one is done.
It is.
Priscilla open to plus 250. She's plus 282 right now. So over there, Harrison Weaver saying Cachoeira by knockout. Lausnan saying I have Robertson, but switch to Cachoeira. And Wet in the Fieldhouse is just not really having it. And Matt, if we have a look at Fight Night Picks for the vote on this one, 61% of the fans have Robertson to 39% that have Cachoeira. Kurtar is saying Robertson by sub round 1. It's only a plus 215. And what are you betting on, Craig? Not this fight, silly goose. But yeah, Matt, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the first fight on the card.
Yeah, I'm going to switch my pick to Robertson. It's a close fight, but I do think her cardio and her wrestling should be able to win it. When I say Cachoeira has nothing off her back, that is not an exaggeration on my part. She is not good at even getting her guard back. Like, there's some fighters who they might give up side control, but they can at least get back to their guard and get back into a defensive position. With Cachoeira, she just kind of lays there and you can get off whatever you want to. And the one good thing about Robertson's game is that she does progress past guard. If she is given that opportunity, she will start to attack submissions, and I do think that'll be a big key to this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, to me, again, you look at those odds, and for Cachoeira at that money, missing weight, you know, I couldn't fault a single person going on it. Too much of a 50-50 risk. I've got Robertson with the grappling. Theo C. Matt is loving the NBA hot takes. The MMA breakdowns are cool, too. Last night, we were talking about it before, I mean, JaVale McGee was almost good as Jason Tatum, right?
He was on fire, lighting it up from 3, blocking shots you'd love to see.
All right, Matt. Our next fight, Randy Costa taking on Tony Kelley. You let us know down below in the comments section who you have. But I'll tell you 2 things, and then I'll add in my 2 cents. I have Randy Costa as the first leg of the question mark kicks parlay at a minus 185 because he didn't tear his rotator cuff in his last fight, and he didn't drive 24 hours to make it to this card. I've got the tweet. And listen, Adam Martin put the tweet out, but check it out. Gabriel Gonzalez with Cage Side Press has an interview with Tony while he's sitting in the car getting interviewed. But yeah, Tony Kelley drove from Louisiana to Vegas. It's like, what, 23 hours and change?
It's like a whole day.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Dan is talking about it over there in the comments section too. And listen, Tony Kelley as a fighter is a guy that he can really just put out your fires. He can wrestle, he can strike with the best of them, but he really likes to establish a jab early and throw his leg kicks. He tore the rotator cuff, and he talked to JHK with the All-Star. The fact that, yeah, he's having a really hard time. Well, not a really hard time
He had
in
to,
camp.
Markel Fultz himself. He
Yeah,
had to
but
learn how to do it again.
In camp, he really had to figure it out to reestablish his jab and try and work around the injury. It's been in the last 6 months or so. I don't have Tony Kelley in this fight. I think Costa's going to have a lot of success in the feet. It's just, can Kelley get into the wrestling positions and stifle Randy Costa's offense? That's my big question.
And the big thing, too, is if Costa's the prospect we think he can be, and if he will be the fighter that we all assume he can be, because here's the thing, when you have one of those prospect v prospect fights, and no matter who ends up winning or losing, they're both still good prospects after that fight. I don't look at his loss to Yanez and just completely write Costa off. I do think he is still a very, very exciting and young fighter. What I will say, though, is I think the Yanez fight was a learning experience for him. And I do think that we've seen this on multiple occasions where you have two young guys fight. And sometimes it's almost better for the loser to lose that fight because you learn a little bit more. And in that fight, he had to learn how to pace himself. He set a crazy pace on Adrian Yanez that he just couldn't keep throughout 3 rounds. And Yanez started to pick him apart. I think he's going to learn from that loss, find that Goldilocks zone where it's not too hot, not too cold, and really pick up on where he left off. I do see him putting on a striking, maybe not masterclass, that might be a step too far, but I do think he is the far superior striker in this fight.
The odds for this one, again, Costa somewhere around a minus 185. That's where I had him before the show. Tony Kelley at a plus 156. If there's anybody that really likes Kelley in this one, you let us know. Matt, I want to make sure I get it right. Tapatio Combate saying he switched camps to Sanford. Costa actually switched camps, and I don't know if you're referencing this right now, but he switched camps before his last fight. So it'll be interesting to see 2 camps under Sanford from Lausanne's before earlier on in his career. But again, Randy Costa was a guy coming into the UFC that was undefeated, but the guys that he had beat had a combined record of 5-14. So he didn't really face the best level competition, loses to Davis on short notice, picks up a couple of wins over Boston Solomon and, Journey Newson. And now he's here for Tony Kelley. He has that better strength of schedule, but we'll see what happens in this one. Both of us going with Costa, and for some reason this one didn't pop up on the Instagrams because sometimes when you post too many pictures in a story, they hide a few of them. Matt, we'll go on to our next one, though. There's the tweet just in case. Our next one, Ryan Hall and Darrick Minner. This is one that was really, really contentious so far through the comment section, through the votes and whatnot, because a lot of people said you guys are overrating Ryan Hall. And listen, I didn't even respond to a single comment. Correct. Here's my time. Here's my chance. Did you watch the fight against Darren Elkins where Ryan Hall came out as a striker? He looked like Alex Caceres in that fight. He looked like Godofredo Pepe in that fight if we're talking about featherweights that can strike and throw a lot of wild stuff. And if you want to play MMA math, Ryan Hall had a field day with Darren Elkins. Darrick Minner did not. He did not. Now, that's not the truth. That really isn't the one that you can hang your hat on because for Darrick Minner, power grappler, beat TJ Laramie easily. And Laramie was that next. I mean, it was again, the Aaron Rodgers in 2015. We're throwing a Hail Mary. He's Canada's next guy, TJ Laramie. And Darrick Minner made it look easy. So, realistically, Minner's one of those guys. If he's on, he's on. But he tends to get submitted quite a bit. For Ryan Hall, he had a terrible night at the office against a primary striker. I say that. Ilya Topuria is like a 5-tool player. He's the Mike Trout of this division. What are you saying for this fight here?
It's just a really hard stylistic matchup for Darrick Minner because Minner is a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but he does need to incorporate his grappling at some point to win a mixed martial arts fight. He is not someone who can go out there and just win a fight on his striking for a total of 15 minutes. It's not that Ryan Hall's that good of a striker either, but I've seen him go out there and outstrike guys, like you mentioned. I know Brendan Schaub said, he doesn't really throw kicks because he's never watched him fight, because he probably doesn't watch fight nights or prelims, but that's not here nor there. Ryan Hall is an underrated striker, and he is unorthodox too. He's got weird straight shots coming down the middle, and he does throw a lot of odd spinning techniques, and when you have jiu-jitsu of Ryan Hall's level, you can throw crazy kicks, because why do you care if anyone takes you down? They're doing you a favor. I do see Darrick Minner going for a takedown at some point, and once you do that, you're sort of jumping into Ryan Hall's world, and I don't see anybody out-grappling Ryan Hall in this division, so I do like Hall.
Al Rob saying, I can never back Ryan Hall again after that ridiculous last fight. Dude looked like he fought. Yeah, that was one of those ones, again, if you look at it, Ryan Hall was trying to just Imanari roll. He only learned one move in UFC in the tutorials.
Okay, Claude Drexler looked awful against Michael Jordan. He's still pretty good in the grand scheme of things. Ilya Topuria is the second-ranked prospect under the age of 25 on ESPN's top prospect list. And the only guy ahead of him is Song Yadong, who's been in the UFC for like 6 years, even though he's 23. So, like, we have to understand who Ryan Hall lost to in his last fight.
Yeah, it really is a tricky one. If you look at the odds for this one, again, like, I could talk until the cows come home about how Darrick Minner can win this fight, because it's not unrealistic. The odds on him open a plus 220 at a plus 163 right now. If you look at it for Ryan Hall, he opened a minus 260, minus 195. Sharif is saying, why take him versus Topuria? I don't know what you're talking about. Apologies. Eddie Fry Jr. saying Topuria is legit. He would smoke Minner as well. And Waji is saying, I hope Hall does good. And Rob G wants to see me do hot sauce shots, and he mentioned that in the comments section earlier this week. The last thing that I really have on this fight, Darrick Minner's going to win. He's got to power through it. He's got to wrestle through it. And if you want to see a good fight of his where he withstood a little bit of really, really early adversity in the form of a takedown against, look at him fight Terrence McKinney. It was a really, really good fight and a lot of fun. But yeah, for me, Matt, I've got Ryan Hall. And we'll move into a fight where we talked about it a little bit earlier on. You like that prospect versus prospect fight?
I do.
Well, that's it. I mean, you had one in Costa versus Yanez. You have one here between Miranda Maverick and Erin Blanchfield. And you caught a little bit of flack because, and I got to talk about it a little bit. We talked about Miranda Maverick and the weight cut and getting ready for this fight, and she looked absolutely ripped probably a week ago or so, and you didn't want her to plateau early. There was a little bit out there in the comments as far as the way that women cut weight versus how men cut weight.
I understand.
And it's true. Jake Allen hitting us up in the super chat, hashtag free. Listen, I saw Jake Allen perform, do his job Thursday night, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. Shayla Santra Bell. But Matt, when we're talking about this fight, both of these women, two of the hottest prospects in this division, I think they're going to have incredibly long careers here at 125, and you might even see one of these two challenging for the title in the next 2 years. I don't think that's unlikely whatsoever.
I hope not, if Valentina is still the champ.
I don't think that's unlikely at all. I mean, even Manon Fiorot is making her way up there. She's a fair bit older than these two. However, it doesn't take many wins to string together something like that. And for Miranda Maverick, she gets to leapfrog the fighter that was supposed to face Erin Blanchfield in Macy Barber. So I absolutely love this fight. Luke is saying, what time do the prelims start? We start our show 2 hours before the prelims. The prelims start at 6 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully that helps you out. Justin Franks is saying, I'm going with Blanchfield. And Danny is liking the way that Maverick is looking before this one. Marcus Henry saying, Blanchfield, let's go. Matt, what are you saying here?
This is a really fun fight, and it feels like these two fighters and Macy Barber are all basically on the exact same level in this division. Like, I know Barber beat Miranda in their last matchup, but that was a very close fight that could have gone either way. And honestly, Blanchfield would probably have a very close fight with Barber too. Like, it feels like these three could all sort of beat each other, if you know what I mean. Just sort of given the night. The weird thing, though, is that I wonder how good Miranda Maverick's going to look in this fight coming off of that loss, because I hope she doesn't try to overcorrect everything and become more of a reserve striker because of that. That's something I hope we don't see, because Miranda Maverick at her best is sort of kind of careless and almost reckless with her striking, but in a really nice way. She's a great striker up the middle. She's got really nice kicks too, especially to the body, and I think those are going to be really important in this matchup. The thing's going to come down to, can she just keep Erin Blanchfield off of her? And that's going to be the question, be it with her power or with her own wrestling, because when you fight someone like Blanchfield, you got to be ready for someone to be right in your face for a whole lot of time, and really, the whole time this fight's going to be going on, Blanchfield's probably going to be the one pressuring Miranda Maverick, so really, however you want to predict this fight is going to come down to this. How does Miranda Maverick deal with the overall wrestling and just the forward pressure of Erin Blanchfield? If you think you have the answer to that question, then you can probably predict this fight.
Tapatio Combate saying Maverick's ground game is hella questionable. To me, I was impressed with the way when she fought Gillian Robertson. Obviously, there are a few scrambles in that one, and as the longer the fight went on, you worried a little bit more. Now, for Blanchfield, she's as accredited on the ground as it gets.
A strong fighter, too.
When you look at the odds for this one, Maverick opened a plus 135. She's minus 138 right now. For Blanchfield, open a minus 155. She's a plus 115. Let's have a look at Fight Night picks for this one. And yeah, 73% of the fans going with Maverick to the 27% that have Blanchfield. I mean, listen, if you really like Blanchfield, I like Blanchfield. If you really, really like her, maybe you want to go with that one. And I agree with Dan and a lot of people in that comment section. I really did think that Maverick won her last fight against Barber. I thought she only lost the third round. But again, you win some, you lose some, and she happened to lose that one. She's 9-3 on her overall record now, and that's just counting the 3-round fights, not those silly one-offs. Over with Invicta, Matt, making the final pick on this one. I like Miranda Maverick. I like the entire team around her, and I really, really like the move to Denver to train for this one. I think the move to Elevation, training with, well, who could we say? Raquel Pennington, there's so many good fighters out there, and I really think that's going to benefit her as this fight goes on as well. And you talk about overcorrecting, it's just that added little bit, especially in the third round. I think that's a big move, but man, Erin Blanchfield with her striking, with her ground game, cannot be overlooked. I see this one as very close.
I think Maverick might have the overall higher ceiling between these two fighters, and that's weird to say because I predict that she lost her last fight, and I don't think she's going to win this one either. Just because stylistically, I do think the pressure of Blanchfield's can be really hard for Maverick to deal with because Maverick does like to throw kicks, especially body kicks, and I can see one of those getting caught at a certain point. And that's going to be an easy takedown attempt for Blanchfield. And for Blanchfield, it's not necessarily making this fight exciting is her key to winning. It's just trying to get top pressure, just trying to force Maverick backwards, and I think Blanchfield can do that.
Matt, up there in the comments section, I mean, listen, there's a lot of people going either way. Danny is saying Maverick beat 3 chicks in one night at once. But again, 1-round fight, so it is what it is. But Matt, we'll move into our next fight because I'm really looking forward to this one. Andrea Muniz taking on Eryk Anders. Eryk Anders stepping in for my guy from South Africa, Dricus du Plessis. I would have loved to have seen that fight. Hopefully they can match that one in the future. And when we're focusing in on this one, Matt, there's 550 tuning in right now. That number is only going to go up as we get closer to the main event. You got to toss a like. We're not even over 100 likes. And listen, for Rob G and the people out there, if we get over 500, I'll do the hot sauce shot. I'll do it for you, Rob, and I'll live to regret it when we do the Fight Night Picks companion later on tonight. But when we focus on Andrea Muniz and the man himself, Eryk Anders, Anders coming in on short notice. He's training at the gym with John Jones. How crazy is this? Eryk Anders was a guy that used to train at SBG, Alabama. And then if you look at it on the opposite side, John Jones always with Jackson Wink. And now they're both together training at Fight Ready MMA in the desert in Arizona. So Anders, he looked good against Darren Stewart the first time. And then he looked good against him the second time. Now he's going to be taking on Andrea Muniz, who was never going to submit Jacare Souza.
Never. Here's the thing. Andrea Muniz is the better mixed martial artist in this fighter, but the great thing about MMA is that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like, Muniz is the better wrestler, he's the better jiu-jitsu practitioner, and that's the thing. The difference between his level of jiu-jitsu and really anything Eryk Anders excels at is a massive difference. If he can get this fight to the mat, it pretty much will be over quick, and I'm somebody who's gone on the record and said that, hey, Anders has underrated grappling, if anything. That was a big talking point when he actually came into the UFC. It was, hey, he actively competes in grappling tournaments, he's a high-level purple belt, and he is a fairly good grappler. We just don't really get to see that side of him all that often. I wouldn't use it at all in this fight, though. The thing is, do you think Muniz can just sort of power his way to a takedown? Because I do think this is one of those fights where one takedown for Muniz, this fight is over. But Eryk Anders is just like that weird sort of athlete who no matter what sport he plays, he's probably okay at it. And I could see him sort of powering his way to a couple takedown defenses and then just pitter-pattering his way to a decision win. Now, the prediction will be Muniz because it is hard to predict against the more skilled guy at the end of the day. But I could see this being one of those parlay busters where the guy who you definitely don't think is going to win pulls out like a weird decision.
Yeah, I mean, if you want it, and I saw this out there in the comment section this week, you focus on Eryk Anders. Well, he beat Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald Meerschaert's a pretty good grappler.
He's slow, though.
He's not a great striker. That's the big trouble. And then if you look at the odds for this one, Muniz and the man himself, Eryk Anders. Muniz coming in here, the favorite, open to minus 125. He's minus 179 right now for Eryk Anders, open to plus 105. He's plus 151. The crazy thing is, too, Brandon Sanders is hanging out in the comments section.
What's up?
The crazy thing about this, when Eryk Anders, I saw this in the comments section, I haven't verified it, so I will throw it out there, though. Anders is an underdog in the UFC, is 0-3 with a no contest. So we'll have to see what happens in this one. At Fight Night Picks for the votes, 66% of the fans going with Muniz to 34% on Anders. And I like the comment up there earlier, too, the fact that Anders is going to hydrate, be the way bigger guy in this fight. It'll be interesting to see how Muniz handles the striking of Anders in this one and the pressure. I'll take Muniz, but again, this is such a tough one to try and predict. It's hard not to go with Anders. I'm split right down the middle. I've got Muniz because his grappling is to that nth degree, but man, Eryk Anders is a tough opponent.
I like Muniz, but don't put money on this.
100%. All right, Matt, we're moving to our next one. Jordan Wright taking on Blindado, Bruno Silva, Jordan Wright. he never gets the respect. He just doesn't, but this guy continues to win. And if you look at it, he has a no contest against Fluffy Hernandez. It is what it is. That one was over on Contender Series. But if you really want to go nuts and bolts on this one, these guys, again, you talk about it to the nth degree. These guys are finishers to the nth degree. For Jordan Wright, his lone loss in the UFC to Joaquin Buckley. For Bruno Silva, he hasn't lost since the M1 Global days. So you get a big-time fight in this one where... hey, Bruno Silva can still knock you out after he's tired in the third round. How about that?
But it worries me when he fights, like, the really good fighters in this division. That's the problem with Bruno Silva. For all the positives, and trust me, there's a lot of positives in his game, you know what's probably going to happen the second he fights, like, a well-rounded fighter in the top 15. He's probably going to get taken down, ground and pounded, look really, really bad in the third round. Now, he's not fighting that right now. Jordan Wright's somebody who likes Fat Joe, just like me. And you know what he likes to do when he defends strikes?
Gigliotti! That wasn't annoying in Triad Combat, but continue.
Lean back is what I was going to say. And I don't know if you've seen Fat Joe's knees lately. They are jacked up from leaning back for the last 20 years. Like, they're really, really bad. But that's the problem with Wright. He has a fatal flaw in the way that he strikes. He backs up, and he puts his chin very high. And again, I've got this theory on people who train with people shorter than them. I think it's a really big problem because you sort of get away with making bad tendencies when you spar, and then those bad tendencies show themselves in the cage. When you're fighting a guy like Bruno Silva who can put together power punches in combination, leaning back in a straight line, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. Now, if Wright had a bit more of a wrestling sort of wrinkle in his game, because he can wrestle, he just doesn't really use it as much as you might like, especially not in this matchup. So, I like Bruno Silva a lot. This is going to probably be another disgusting win.
Adnan saying Wright is actually the parlay buster. Don't bet on this fight. Like, I could throw around a lot of curse words. Bruno Silva has never gotten a win by submission. He's had a couple, 3 decision wins. The rest of them are by knockout. Jordan Wright's only ever won by finish. 7 of them by dropping his phone, 7 of them by submission, 5 by knockout. You'd be really silly if you decided to go with this. Because again, go with the under 2.5. It's a big minus though. So again, I don't see a lot of value here. But if you look at it for Bruno Silva, my guy, he's a giant favorite in this fight. Open to minus 350, minus 340 right now for Jordan Wright. Open to plus 285. He's plus 268. But yeah, again, Jordan Wright standing back, leaning back, walking back to the cage. That's normally how you get knocked out. Now, listen, William Knight did that against Fabio Charant, and then he just threw a quick hook and knocked Charant out. Like, it can happen.
Can we stop with the
it
Fabio
can happen.
Charant?
But Bruno Silva, he has the grappling to go with his striking. I like Silva in this fight. Armchair MMA. Wright has 0 defense, and Hank's too raw. I already slammed Silva in a parlay. It's too late. All right.
Fabio Charant's like Clint Frazier. Like, why are we still talking about him?
Hey, he's going to have a good chance with his new team. We'll go with the votes on this one to have a little bit of fun. 67% on Silva at Fight Night Picks. But, we'll have a look here at our next fight, Matt. Augusto Sakai. Augusto Sakai is taking on Tai Tuivasa, Matt. I threw it down in the notes. Augusto Sakai for his last fight weighed 255.5. 255.5.
Could you say thicker than a bowl of oatmeal?
Well, now this weekend, yes, he weighed 263.5. He's gained 8 pounds for this fight, taking on Tuivasa, who I'm assuming cuts to 264. Or maybe he's right there. John is saying that this is the fight of the night. Justin Frank's saying, I think Sakai takes him down. Justin Franks, you're going to be disappointed because on average, we talked about this one, getting ready for this fight earlier in the week, and I got to find it here. That was the number I thought it was. 0.14 takedown average per 15 minutes for Augusto Sakai. Doesn't happen very often. Garrett Rincon is saying, let me get Thai Kai Australian New Zealand combo. He's liking the Anzacs here with the super chat. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Garrett.
We're many likes away from the 500 for the hot sauce. But Matt, when we look at this fight, you got one guy who goes by his nickname and fights that way. You got another guy that has no nickname and fights in a different way.
I gotta disagree with your point about the stats. I think if Augusto Sakai ever goes for a takedown, it's going to be in this fight. If you've ever shown it in your UFC career up until this point, this is the fight you're going to show it again because Tai Tuivasa has nothing off of his back.
Watch the Sergey Spivak fight.
At all. Like, it's embarrassing. He just sort of lays there, tries to do these lazy hammer fists off his back, and Spivak beats him into the mat and submits him. Now, Sakai doesn't have that type of top control. He doesn't really have that kind of a game. But if you are going to go for a takedown, you're going to do it against Tai Tuivasa. This is the worst fight on the card, though. I really do think that by the end of the card, we're going to be like, oh, remember that stinker that was Sakai versus Tuivasa? Because I think people are starting to come around on this where, like, heavyweight might not be the most aesthetically pleasing division to watch. Because this is the thing. If you don't have to make weight, this is the only case for weight cutting. And weight cutting is not good if you do a lot of it. But, like, the good thing about weight cutting is that it makes sure that the athlete is in 100% shape. Because you're going to miss weight if you're not. If you're at heavyweight and if you do just have to cut like 2 pounds to make your weight, or if you don't have to cut anything like Sakai, you don't have to be the most disciplined in fight camp. So I don't know if we're always getting the best version of either guy. I'm just saying, this is the most 50-50 fight on the card. If Sakai lands a big shot and knocks out Tai Tuivasa, nobody should be surprised. And the same thing has to be said for Tuivasa on Sakai. What I will say, though, is that if anyone's going to win a decision, I would say Sakai is the slightly more likely to. He doesn't have the worst striking volume. Listen, he's not a fun heavyweight to watch by any means, but he can string together a little bit of volume on the feet. And I do think that's going to be a big key to this fight if nobody scores a knockout early.
Surprise! Augusto Sakai opened it even. He's minus 102 if you look at it for Tuivasa. Again, he's a minus 119. What are we doing here? Like, this seems silly. I've got Augusto Sakai. 69% of the fans at Fight Night Picks have Tai Tuivasa. I've got Sakai all gosh darn day.
Really?
I
wouldn't say all gosh darn day.
I don't have him in the parlay, but again, you get blitzed by Rosenstrike. Maybe that gives you pause as far as Tuivasa because he can do something like that. But yeah, for me, big time, I have Augusto Sakai. Coming off 2 main events in a row. Now he's not training for those 5 rounders. He can gain that 8 pounds. It's going to help him out. I like Sakai.
Everything's telling me I should pick Tai Tuivasa just because how confident Craig is, but I'll stick with the Sakai pick.
All right, Matt, we're moving into one of my favorite fights on this card. Go ahead.
Last thing for me.
No, Drew Ma Fitness hitting us up in the super chat.
Thank you.
$100.
Very nice.
Drew Ma Fitness, you are the Fight Night Picks
A real one.
MVP. You get this virtually. Here's the Fight Night Picks MVP trophy. That goes to Drew Ma. You can't see the lettering, but it is there.
Very nice of you, Drew Ma. Thank you.
You're the MVP.
Do you think Sakai gets cut if he loses to Tuivasa? Because I know he went from main eventing 2 fights, but that's a big step down going from 2 main events to Tai Tuivasa.
Nah, I don't think so.
Fair enough.
But Matt, on this fight, a lot of people saying that we picked this fight with our hearts and not our heads, which is funny because we got fired up in this one, but then when the cameras turned off, we realized that we just had a misunderstanding, and that was it. But I kept it all in there. We were riled up about the movement of Cruz.
Well, yeah, you said he had bad cardio and he slowed down.
I went back and watched it 3 times. I actually didn't say that. What I did say was the fact that Cruz used that fancy footwork early, and then in the second and the third rounds, he builds on his great volume.
When he's leg kicked, he does that. He will always use his footwork, though. The big key of Cruz, though, is he doesn't accept leg kicks well. And the problem about his game, you see it in Sean O'Malley, too. I don't know if it's just because their game is so footwork oriented that when anything knocks it off, it sort of like messes everything up because that's sort of how they establish their game. I know I always bring this up, but Chael Sonnen said, Michael Bisping might be a far better striker than me, but if I don't let him jab, he won't be able to build on it.
Matt Simone hitting us up in the Super Chat. The Super Chat's going crazy today, Matt.
Thank
Best
you, Matt
fans
Simone.
in the game out there. Drew Ma Fitness, Garrett Rincon, Matt Simone. Everybody who's hit it up recently means a lot to us.
Yes, thank you guys very much. But the big thing about Cruz is that once you do start to knock off that footwork, it will change his game a little bit. And the key to this fight is, if you think Muniz can land 1 leg kick, he's going to be able to land 2, 3, 4, 5, and you get the idea. Those are just going to keep on stacking up. They're going to make Cruz easier to hit. And then Muniz is by far the more heavy-handed guy in this fight. Or if Cruz can avoid that leg kick, pitter-patter on the outside, just get his volume really, really high, he should be able to win a very one-sided decision. This is one of those fights where Cruz could get a 10-8 round without scoring a knockdown. You get the idea, like, he lands 90 punches to, like, 3 in a round, and you're like, oh my goodness, what was that? Now, I'm going to say this. At the start of the week, I didn't think Muniz would be able to land any of those leg kicks, but I do think
Matt Simone hitting us up again in the Super Chat. Matt Simone battling with Drew Ma for the prediction MVP of the week.
You guys are very good to us. Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. I do think Muniz is going to clip Cruz. This is the thing. I don't often listen to other people's videos or watch other people's videos and let it influence my prediction just because I want to go into things with a fresh mind. But I was watching the guys over there at Morning Combat, Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, and they were breaking this fight down. And I thought they made a very good point. I don't think Cody Garbrandt set the blueprint for how to beat Dominic Cruz. I think Henry Cejudo may have. Because if you look at what Henry Cejudo did, he slowly chops down the legs, it slows Cruz down, and then he hits him up top. But it wasn't just the fact that he caught him with the knee, it was that he kind of out-thought Dominic Cruz. Because you have to remember, there's the head clash right before it, Cruz gets a little cut, and then Cruz does the exact same dip that caused the head clash, but Henry Cejudo just met him with a knee instead of his head. I think Pedro Muniz can set up a very similar tactic and land a big shot, and I do think Muniz is going to win by stoppage. Thank you, Matt Simone.
Matt Simone, I gotta find it here. You get this.
You're a very good man.
Listen, we're gonna go into the archives. You get this trophy.
You win this week.
You're the prediction champion for this week. We handed out the MVP, so apologies. But Matt Simone, it means a lot. You're the prediction champion
great.
for this week. I'm gonna put that down right there. It might still be in view. It might not be. Matt Simone's a good man. But yeah, Matt, on this fight, that was kind of what I was getting at, but then we got heated and we just didn't really get to go there. But yeah, Cejudo throwing those leg kicks, throwing Cruz off, it really is a blueprint to a game plan. Casey Kenny wasn't really able to do that in his last fight. Pedro Muniz is the type of guy to do that. Now, there's one saying that everybody has out there. It's swing big, miss big. But the trouble is, when you swing big and then you hit big, everybody kind of forgets about that. Remember the young Punisher when he took on Cody Garbrandt? He was swinging big. It was like he was
going...
going...
We were at McDonald's drive-thru.
We were. He was going out there. He was swimming big, and he was hitting.
Yeah, they both just traded overhand rights for like 10 seconds.
That's the crazy part about it. So if you like Muniz in this spot, I can't fault you whatsoever. And Matt seems like he's going that way. The odds for this one... I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point. Muniz minus 112, Dominic Cruz minus 108. So Muniz is the slight favorite. Let's just go to the votes really quick, Matt, at Fight Night Picks. And they are not there because they hid them. So I'll just tell you what I think on this one. I still have Cruz with the movement. I still have Cruz with the volume. But again, that leg kick's a giant thing. And if I see that employed in the first round, again, I'm not putting anything on this. But I might after from first round to second round. The thing I do like about Cruz, even in the age that he's at right now, he's the best bantamweight of all time. You can't take that away from him. But I like how if he's winning a fight, or regardless of the first round, he can turn his volume up. And the other thing that I like, the activity. Going into the Cejudo fight, not as much activity. Going into this fight, since Cejudo, he's fought again against Casey Kenny. I like to see that out of my Dominic Cruzes, and I like that in this one.
He didn't look good against Casey Kenny, though. I didn't think he did. And the weird thing was, I feel like we are seeing sort of a rapid descent of Dominic Cruz. Like, the injuries are starting to catch up to him, because people forget, he had all those terrible ACL injuries, had to get it replaced, and then there was, like, a problem with the replacement. There was a lot of issues with his knees. And I think they're catching up with him, because you can sort of get over those injuries when you're a little bit younger, but time sort of takes it from everybody. And I do think that in this stage of Dominic Cruz's career, those injuries are catching up to him. And the thing about Muniz, he might go by the young Punisher, but he is not young by any means. He's like Wonder Boy. Just like, find a new nickname at this point. It's based off your age and you can no longer use it. But he still fights pretty much like the same guy who was in the UFC, who fought... probably shouldn't say Brian Caraway because he fought for PEDs, but you get the idea. He still is very much a similar fighter. With Cruz, he went from being like an MVP caliber guy to just like a borderline all-star. And I think in this matchup, he's going to take another step back. I think the footwork's going to be a little bit slower, and I think Muniz will land a big shot.
Matt, we talk about injuries. Josh Emmett, in his last fight against Shane Burgos. Listen, Marco hitting us up in the Super Chat. Marco, I don't think I've seen you in the Super Chat,
Marco.
Saying the only UFC prediction channel to go the best in the game. I really appreciate that, Marco. That really means a lot. And Matt, when we're focusing on this fight, if we can switch from Marco, who's so generous, and everybody else out there in the Super Chat this week too, you guys are really supporting the boys here. And listen, we're going to hang out with you. We're going to have a lot of fun with the Fight Night Picks companion later on tonight. We don't have the Deer Decks of the world, but we have ourselves. So there's that.
That's
Matt,
fine.
when we're focusing up on this fight, a lot of people were surprised that we spent most of the video talking about Josh Emmett, only to pick Dan Ige. But again, here is the trouble. And Vincent Chapman, you guys take too long to spit out what you have to say and to get to the point. Vincent Chapman.
That's fine. I don't care.
Hit up the Super Chat, buddy.
So,
this is where I want to go with this. In the Shane Burgos fight. Complete ACL tear, partial MCL tear, Baker cyst rupture, focal impact fracture of the femur, cartilage defect on the tibia. And then in Josh Emmett's recovery, and why you didn't see him in the spring, he had a delay due to complications in recovery from the patellar injury and a fractured patellar bone. The guy hits super hard. The guy has good wrestling. You can never count him out. I counted him out at the start of the week.
You really did, and I don't agree with your overall assessment of this fight, because I do think it's a lot closer than what you say. Listen, I think Dan Ige is going to win, but you've completely counted out Josh Emmett in this one. Yes, you did. You don't think he has a chance, mainly because of the injuries, and it makes sense, but this is the thing. I truly think, other than injuries, Josh Emmett's basically better than Dan Ige in everything.
Yeah.
Dan Ige's in this weird position where it's weird. If Calvin Kattar's like the best version of a volume boxer in this division, and honestly, Josh Emmett's probably the opposite side of the spectrum. He's the best example of a power puncher in this division. Dan Ige's like the happy medium. He can play both sides. He's a good power puncher, but he doesn't need to rely on his power, which is what I really like about his game. But I really worry about him standing in the pocket for even 1 millisecond too long with a guy like Emmett, because Emmett doesn't really rely on footwork in his game. I know he's got that weird like side shuffle thing that he does, but he doesn't rely on explosive footwork. He will just plant and try to fire and hit you with that one punch, and that's why I worry a little bit less about the injuries, because with Emmett, as long as he is upright and throwing shots, there is that opportunity for a knockout. The weird thing though is, I don't understand, with the odds makers knowing what we know, with all of the injuries, why did Emmett open up as such a big favorite?
I don't know. Now, William, thanks for taking my back over there in the comments section, because yeah, I spent the whole video pointing out how Josh Emmett can win this fight, giving him his flowers, saying at the start of the video, if Josh Emmett wasn't injured, would he have had a title shot yet? Like, he would have, if he didn't, then he would have had some pretty darn good fights. He opened a -200, he's -151 right now. For Ige, open a plus 170, he's a plus 126. And listen, Tim Rose hitting us up in the super chat. This is the most Matt and I randoming on UFC 4 fight ever. Should be fun. Tim, we had to get this fight. I think it's a good one.
It's a good one.
I think if you were going to have the most random fight at 145 on UFC 4, it would be Josh Emmett and Alex Caceres.
Tim picks Conor McGregor at featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight. Beats me every time in every single weight class. It's
this
a good
guy,
time.
He's the man. But Matt, yeah, when I'm focusing on this one, I think the movement of Ige, but again, we talked about it at the start of the week. If we get a wrestling exchange, throw my papers out the window. That's going to be crazy. I'd love to see that, truth be told.
It would be really nice. And the question comes down to, who do you think's cardio will be more affected by the wrestling? I know that's an oddly specific thing to ask, but think about a guy like Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is a really good wrestler, but he doesn't use it mainly because it makes him tired in his fights, and he'd rather use that energy striking and absorbing strikes. I think Emmett might be the slightly more conditioned wrestler, to where Ige might have the slightly higher output in the fight. He might be able to get slightly higher volume on the outside, but if he does start wrestling, I do think it's going to even their cardio a little bit. It might make him slightly more available for Emmett to land that one big shot.
Queen Radiant, I just subbed. I definitely appreciate that of you. The pick for this one, I have Dan Ige. Let's go to Fight Night Picks, just see where people are at, because people in the comment section seem to be kind of all over the place. 61% at Fight Night Picks have Emmett to 39% Ige. I'm going to go with the underdog here, again, out of Ige, just because I'm so scared of those injuries. But again, Emmett's one of those guys, like you saw in the Johnson fight, like you saw in the Burgos fight. As that fight goes on, it's almost like he gets stronger. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes out in the first round. We talked about that a lot with Rob Font and Jose Aldo. How does Rob Font come out in the first round? Well, he looked great. He really matched everything that I had on my notes. And then as the fight went on, Jose Aldo got stronger with his punching power. How can Josh Emmett come out here to match Dan Ige in the first round? That's going to be really telling for me, but I like Ige here.
I like Ige in this matchup too, but if Emmett wins by knockout, nobody should be surprised. And I guess the one good thing is, if Emmett does win this fight, we're going to get some new fresh matchups in the top of the division, because injuries have taken away a certain amount of his prime. And listen, we've seen Dan Ige against Calvin Kattar, against the Korean Zombie. He normally does come up short when he does face that sort of upper echelon, elite level guys, but we haven't seen Emmett in there with a lot of those guys, so it could offer some fresh matchups. But I will pick Ige, and here's the last thing. I know we've talked a lot about Emmett winning by knockout. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ige was able to go out there and get a TKO either. I know it's not as likely. He doesn't have as big power as Josh Emmett does, but Ige can still bang with guys on the feet.
Vincent Chapman, back in 2018 when we started the channel, we actually interviewed Josh Emmett right after he got finished by Jeremy Stephens. He was in the recovery process, and the reason why I wanted to get him on was because he just competed in an ACB grappling tournament while he couldn't actually fight in MMA. So
seems like a nice guy.
I don't know what to say there, pal, but Matt, we start the main card off, and we have the Fight Night Picks companion that starts. We get 15 minutes before the main card starts, and the reason why, YouTube wouldn't let you go 5 minutes before. So we're going to start 15 minutes before. We're going to have a lot to talk about. We have this one between Raulian Paiva and Sean O'Malley, and Raulian Paiva is here to fight Sean O'Malley. But Sean O'Malley's here to fight everybody else in the division and Cody Garbrandt at 125. So it's kind of crazy to think of it that way. Over in the comments section, Sharif is saying O'Malley all day. I think this is going to be a really, really close fight. I think people are counting out Raulian Paiva.
As they should.
This guy's a really good fighter.
But the problem is, you want to talk about swing big, miss big, and just leaving gaps in your game. Raulian Paiva leaves those gaps. And the great thing about Sean O'Malley is that he's an accurate striker moving backwards and moving forwards. And I just have a hard time betting on a lot of guys who are strikers against O'Malley. And
Serial Chiller saying Raulian Paiva all day. Let's go! Let's go.
Craig, you don't think Paiva's going to win either, so I don't know why you're saying let's go to this. O'Malley's the way bigger fighter, too. Even if you think Paiva has some area in his game that he can capitalize over O'Malley, O'Malley's still at least 10 pounds bigger. And that's a minimum right now. He's as big as a bantamweight can possibly get. Fighting a flyweight, moving up to bantamweight. And I know he looked good against Kyler Phillips. That was a weird fight, but he did have some good moments in it. Let's give him his due. I just think if you look at what Kyler was able to do, especially on the feet against Paiva, I don't see why O'Malley can't replace that and recreate that kind of a game plan. And really, if Kyler didn't go for a takedown after he landed a 720 elbow, he probably would have won that fight via knockout. Now, you think if O'Malley drops Paiva, he'll probably just let him back up to his feet.
14 of the 16 voters at MMA Decisions had that fight a draw. One had it 29-28 Paiva, one had it 29-28 for the man himself, Kyler Phillips. But the judges had it, two of them 29-28 for Paiva, so he wins. Over in the comments section, things are moving quickly. Let's see, Matt. Jesse Meehan is saying, does anyone else hate watching and listening to the guy on the right? I've thought that for years. Jesse Meehan, you're just a rude guy. Why are you even here? Get out of here, pal. Matt, when we're focusing in on this fight, Sean O'Malley, again, other than the fight against Marlon Vera, has cruised through his fights. Oh, yes. Wait. But what about the fight that he had where he had the injury and then his opponent decided, you know what, we're just going to take it down to the mat? That one was a little crazy.
He destroyed Andre Sukumtot, though, before that. I really don't care.
All right, Matt. Well, when we look at this one, it was mentioned up there earlier, the fact that, listen, O'Malley is a pretty big favorite. When we look at it for Sean O'Malley, the average at best fight odds, minus 339. For Raulian Paiva, plus 266. The guy can last. The guy can grapple. He's a little bit volume-based, I guess, in his striking attack, and he doesn't have the most power, so if he goes out there and finishes Sean O'Malley, it would surprise me.
He's not going to.
Yeah, that's it. I really do like Sean O'Malley in this fight. I have a hard time picking against him, and if we look at Fight Night Picks, listen, that's another one that got hidden by the algorithm of Instagram.
I don't understand why this fight got put together. It makes no sense. I get it, O'Malley, and he said it himself. He's like, why would I fight guys in the top 15? I'm not on a big contract yet, but this just, even as a fan, it's hard to get excited for this matchup because we all pretty much know what's going to happen. O'Malley is the far bigger guy. He's the much better striker against another guy who's probably going to go in there and strike with him. It's just, this isn't really the matchups that help build your hype for the sort of hardcore fans. You guys who are watching this, you're on the inside. You're in this club. And I don't think anyone out there is watching this thinking hey, oh, wow, Raulian Paiva has a real chance. And if O'Malley beats him, it's going to prove a lot against the top 15.
Wadji makes the point. Yes, it makes sense. Dana doesn't want to ruin O'Malley. It was out there this week. They don't want to rush him. They don't want to throw him into too many fights. He got on Contender Series in 2017. It's been 4 years. What are we waiting for? AJ McKee at a certain point, and it was multiple years, but they started to. Now, the tournament kind of threw him into there, but you saw exactly what happens. There is an absolute time and place for Sean O'Malley to start facing those upper echelon guys. When and if you beat Raulian Paiva, it's got to be top 15. If you give Sean O'Malley a guy that hasn't fought in the UFC, I saw it today, Gregory Rodriguez is 2-0 in the UFC at middleweight, and fights have fallen out, so now he gets a guy that's coming in off Contender Series. Even Gregory Rodriguez should be fighting better fighters. This is the point where Sean O'Malley needs to fight better guys. If he beats Paiva,
I think he should before.
You got to give him a rank guy. Make it Dominic Cruz. Make it Pedro Munoz. Make it somebody like that. But my goodness, it makes me upset.
I'm going to say, do they Weekend at Bernie's Frankie Edgar out there to make him fight Sean O'Malley? I hope not. That would be awful. So we both have O'Malley in this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We'll move into our next fight. This is one of the most watched videos we had out there this week. Kai Kara-France taking on Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt wants to fight Sean O'Malley so bad. So bad. And Matt, I'd love to see it, but he's got a big-time fight coming up at 125 pounds. Now listen. Slow clap. Because he made weight. 126. You love to see it out of Cody Garbrandt. I want to make sure I got that right. Yep, 126. Good for him. Canadians for the cup. They're not winning it this year, but saying Cody all day. Matt, I think this is going to be a heck of a fight.
So
Cody
do I.
Garbrandt has hammers in his hands. How's his speed going to translate at 125 against a speedy, slick guy who is susceptible to getting hit?
I think it will make for a really good fight. That's really the only thing I feel comfortable saying because it is so 50-50. And this is the weird thing. I actually think Garbrandt might have the speed edge, but oddly enough, Kara France might have a bit of a power edge. And I don't mean just straight shots down the middle because that's the thing about Garbrandt. He's so lightning fast that it's 1, 2, 3 and you don't really know what happened and you're out. Kara France loads up on his shots. I know we talk about, oh, he's got a Muay Thai background, he's from City Kickboxing, but like, you know when his punches are coming because he puts a lot into them. Even, who lost to Brandon? I can't believe I forgot his name. He lost to Brandon Moreno. He popped his shoulder out.
Brandon Royval.
Thank you. When he fought Brandon Royval, he got pieced up in that fight. Now, he dropped Royval with a big overhand, but when Royval was going down the middle, being slightly more accurate, he was able to hurt Kara France. And
the one and only hitting us up in the super chat, really just giving you the pat on the back.
Thank you for gassing me up.
Let's go.
I appreciate it. I think Kara France could score a knockout, though. And the weird thing, and I guess the question I'll pop over to you is, Garbrandt's chin can't be better at 125 pounds, but do you think he will be more susceptible to getting hit at this division? Like, if Kara France lands clean, will you be worried about how Garbrandt is able to eat the power?
A little bit. I mean, I see it over there. Clay was saying that he has post-weigh-in buyer's remorse after picking Kai Kara France. I don't necessarily. I mean, the thing that I found interesting, and j'étais parti toute la semaine, so I was in Quebec, and I didn't get to watch a lot of the content because I was really having a hard time, and Vincent Chapman's still just going in. But when I look at this, I really focused in on watching one of the interviews. Now listen, I don't have big wrists at all. We know that. You know that. You can tease me about it, whatever. I noticed that when Cody was sitting there with the mic in his hand, his wrists look really skinny, so he definitely lost a lot of that muscle mass. You got to go from somewhere if you're losing 10 pounds.
Have you seen Charles Oliveira? He's the champion. He's built like a tree.
MPTV, you can tell Matt does his research. I'm like DC and Gray.
Wow, that's funny.
MPTV, you have no clue. But Matt, when I look at this one and you really focus in on who you're trying to go with, I still have Kai Kara France in the fight. But again, this is another one of those ones, 50-50 right down the middle. Sean McMinn hitting us up in the super chat. This is one of those ones that really kind of gives me pause, not as much in our next fight, which is my second leg of the question mark kicks parlay. I know Alex Graham was very worried about it. Maybe he missed something. But in this one, I have Kai Kara France, but this is a toss-up here.
What do you think's been said more times? If Cody Garbrandt stays disciplined or if Tyron Woodley lets his hands go? They're like 1A and 1B for the most said things that we've never seen in a UFC octagon. That's what it comes down to for Garbrandt. If he gets into a wild war, he's going to lose a wild war. But if he does stay technical, stay disciplined, and box a smart fight, I think he can win this one. Oddly enough, based on decision and off of stoppage, I'm going to stick with the pick, though, of Kara France. I think the leg kicks are going to be important in this matchup. If you go back and watch the TJ Dillashaw fights, I kind of forgot how important the leg kicks were in slowing down Garbrandt in those matchups. I know you focus on the knockdowns and sort of the bigger moments of that fight, but TJ was able to land a really nice calf kick on Garbrandt that did limit some of his movement, and I think if Kara France can employ a similar game plan, he'll be able to do something very similar. So I like Kara France, even by stoppage.
All right, Matt, we'll move into our next fight. We have Jeff Neal taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio, and I was not necessarily surprised, but, you know, when they have those big media days, and especially if it's a pre-fight press conference, they're all law ball questions. You're never, if you're out there on Twitter really pining for somebody to ask a hard-hitting question, that's not what those are for. But if you go to the media day, that's where you're going to get some of those questions. And listen, the man in blue, John Morgan from MMA Junkie, he said, listen, Jeff, you knew you were going to have to answer for it, so let's get into it. Why and what happened on Thanksgiving? Jeff Neal really answered it honestly, earnestly, and they moved on from there. I don't have too much to say on it. We're not TMZ, so we won't. But it's definitely not a good position to be in going into a fight night. Now, Jeff Neal says that, listen, he feels better than he did in his last 2 fights. He really got to a good supplementing regime. Yeah, he's taking a lot of supplements, and physically he feels better than when he had sepsis. That's awesome to hear, because I love to watch Jeff Neal perform.
So do I.
For Jeff Neal to go out there and fight. He didn't look good against Neil Magny. He didn't look good against Wonderboy Thompson. You could probably even attribute that, like he has to the I wouldn't even say near, the life-threatening things that he went through. So, for me, I look at this fight. Jeff Neal could go out there and knock out Ponzinibbio like Li Jingliang did. I have Santiago Ponzinibbio as the second leg of the question mark kicks parlay. So, him And Randy Costa and Amanda Nunes, I'll throw that one out there, is a plus 220. Without Nunes, it's plus 190. But for me, I like Santiago Ponzinibbio here.
Trevor Byers, I agree 100%. Ponzinibbio does look good for a 35-year-old. It is kind of wild to think. Like, he's not the youngest guy in the division anymore.
Also went through life-threatening medical issues.
Exactly. Had MRSA, which is what? Staph in your bloodstream, basically. So, like, not a very good thing to have at all. But he has been able to get over those injuries. And when you look at Ponzinibbio and his overall career trajectory, it was, hey, he had that he had all the injuries after his win over Neil Magny. Had the bad loss to Li Jingliang, but I think that was one of those cases where he just sort of had to get one out of the way. And I know in MMA, it's sort of hard to get wrap your mind around because, when you lose in this sport, it's not by like a last second layup. It's because you got knocked out. That's never to Ponzinibbio. But he has looked better since then, and I do think he's going to be able to build, especially on his last performance against Baez, because against Miguel Baeza, he was able to eat Baeza, not Baez. Against Baeza, he was able to eat some big power shots in the feet, which I do think will be important because he's going to have to eat some big shots from Jeff Neal in this fight. The question is, do you think Neal is still, aggressive as he used to be? Because if he's not, and if we do see the fighter who fought Wonderboy, who fought especially Neil Magny, then I don't think he has any chance in this fight. But if we do get Jeff Neal, who is at least similar to the guy who fought Mike Perry a few years ago, then this should be a phenomenal fight, like fight of the night worthy fight.
Well, that's just it. I mean, even John Morgan opened it by saying this. A lot of people have this tabbed as a possible fight of the night. And in the comments section, Justin Frank's going at serial chiller. But yeah, I don't see Neal struggling with the wrestlers. He usually does well against them. He struggles against the strikers, the last two guys that he faced. And for Neil Magny, it wasn't necessarily the wrestling. He just stayed on the outside, pumped the jab out there, the 1-2, and that's all he had to do. So, Matt, for me in this fight, Joshua Chipman, Ponzinibbio's hittable. If you don't like the question mark kicks parlay, that's absolutely fine. Water off a duck's back. I'm only going light on this one, and I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. You can find us on the Fight Night Picks companion, especially if it's gone horribly wrong, and you can tee-hee and laugh at us. I know Bailey Riplinger is looking forward to that companion.
We'll see.
So in this one, Matt, who do you have for this one? Because it seems like a lot of people are split. I'll go over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram for the picks, and 62% on Ponzinibbio, 38% that have Jeff Neal. But maybe you don't see Jeff Neal going on a 3-fight skid in this one.
I think Ponzinibbio is the steadier guy, and I do think that's going to matter. Listen, could Jeff Neal knock out Ponzinibbio? Of course he could. He could land a left straight. He could land a head kick. He is a very dangerous striker on the feet, but he does not have a very good level of volume, and he can get outpaced. And if he's the one backing up, he does sometimes struggle with pressure because it's like, okay, can I let my hands go? Can I let my hands go? Especially when he does fight someone who will threaten with a takedown. Ponzinibbio won't threaten with a takedown, but he is very heavy with his calf kicks, and I do think those are going to be a big key to this fight. If he can slow down some of Neal's movement, it's going to make him much more available to be hit. And if Ponzinibbio can start landing some punching combinations, he is an absolute monster with his kickboxing. So I do like your pick, and I do see Ponzinibbio winning. But again, we don't say this is going to be fight of the night, and it's going to be a one-sided fight. Like, this should be a phenomenal fight.
I didn't mean to put Clay Loiseau in timeout, so Clay, I apologize to you, Matt. 858 tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
We still have the co-main event and the recap to go forward. Only 246 likes, and listen, the hot sauce shots happen at 500, so you got to make it happen. But Matt, I absolutely love this fight, and it seems like a lot of people not necessarily going with Ponzinibbio, a lot of people in disagreement. I like to see that. Listen, we can't all be right, and we can't all agree all the time on this one. Where are the Juliana Pena fans? Let's hear it from you, because listen, I saw them out there, Matt. I really did.
No, you did.
I'm gonna go
Bigfoot this week.
I'm gonna go with the votes here at Fight Night Picks. 90% going Nunes to the 10% that have Pena, but they are there, so that one's fair. In this fight, I have Amanda Nunes. She's a minus 9-10 favorite, so if you want to add her to something, maybe go for it. But I like Nunes, weighed in at 134.5. You like to see that, and for me, I've got Nunes, but goodness gracious, I don't have poor Juliana Pena here, and I don't have many nice things to say.
Whenever you have a fighter who's like a minus 500, they're normally better at pretty much everything. But the one thing most underdogs can take solace in is that, hey, we're better at one thing, or at least there's one aspect of our game that we're better than the champion at. Do you think Juliana Pena has any part of her game she's better than Amanda Nunes at? Like, even the grappling, I don't think she's better than Nunes at.
Sean Glenn, maybe. I appreciate the super chat, maybe.
It's a hard matchup because Pena's not a finisher. She doesn't have knockout power, and she's not, I won't say she's not a submission threat, but she's not a submission specialist, I'll say. So, since she can't finish Nunes, she's probably not going to outpace her. She's not going to outstrike her. She's not going to consistently outgrapple her. I just don't see any avenue for Pena to win this fight, so you've got to pick Nunes.
It's a tough one. I mean, listen, The Queen Radiance got Gillian to win, but yeah, for me, I've got Nunes. I don't have a whole lot nice to say about it. The Jermaine Durandamy fight was really, really telling. So we'll move on to our main event of the evening. And Matt, we have Charles Oliveira taking on Dustin Poirier. The votes for this one in the poll, 1,030 votes. You're split. Right down the middle, 50-50. So if you haven't voted for that one, you let us know. Cody Keller saying a toss-up, 50-50. Heck of a fight.
It's amazing. This is the best fight of the year, at least in my mind, because Charles Oliveira has definitely earned the lightweight title. He has fought a murderer's row of fighters, beat Tony Ferguson, who at one point everybody felt like was sort of the uncrowned champ of the division, and then beats Michael Chandler, a guy who, yes, there are some question marks about him, and especially his durability, but you know how good of a fighter Chandler is, and just how hard of a fight that is for anybody. And the fact that Oliveira gets hurt in the first round, faces adversity, which really was the question mark throughout his career, when the going gets tough, could Charles Oliveira get tougher? And up until that point, it really was a question mark. When you're beating guys like Jared Gordon and Nick Lentz, you're not facing that much adversity, if we're all being honest. But when you're fighting guys like Tony Ferguson and Michael Chandler, you're going to get pieced up here and there. And Oliveira, he proved that, hey, I can face adversity, get over that hump, and look really good afterwards. He's fighting Dustin Poirier, though, who, other than Kamaru Usman's probably the only other guy who has a claim to being this year's Fighter of the Year. I would say, like, if he's able to beat Oliveira, I would say... Chris Curtis, but he never, like, the other two guys are champion. I would say their level of competition is much better than Curtis, but I would say, yes, he's nominated. I knew you were going to say this the second I brought this up, but it's definitely Usman or Poirier. This is what I'm going to say. Poirier can win this fight in every single way, but so can Oliveira, and that's not really being brought up. Everybody's looking at this as, oh, Poirier can knock out Oliveira. Oliveira can do the same thing to Poirier, and the real question mark is, will Oliveira throw a lot of kicks in this fight? Because if he can keep this fight at kicking range, he's going to stay out of Poirier's boxing, but he's going to be susceptible to that calf kick, which we've seen him eat throughout his career. Now, if he can throw body kicks and head kicks at Poirier, it's going to keep Poirier's hands occupied, blocking all those shots, and it's going to prevent him from being offensive with his own game. But I keep on going back to this quote from Poirier. Fighting me for 25 minutes is a long time, and that's the truth. Like, he doesn't need that one punch to knock you out. He doesn't need a lot of volume to knock you out. He just sort of does a lot of damage to you throughout the fight. Like, Max Holloway might have the best cardio of all time. He might be able to withstand more than any other guy in the cage, but, like, Poirier put it on him, and he really hurt him in a lot of instances throughout that fight. So I really do like Poirier, and probably by stoppage later on in the fight.
Rick Grimes has Charles Oliveira. The best quote that we had out there was, anybody picking Dustin Poirier this week is a casual. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, really, it is funny when you get into it. Like, the amount of people that... Poirier in this fight, I mean, he's the favorite. Like, we can bring it up on best fight odds, which isn't necessarily something that's all that common when you see the challenger as the favorite. No. Open a plus 145 to Charles Oliveira. He's plus 113 right now. For Poirier, open to minus 165. He's a minus 137 right now. And Matt, for Sean in the comments section, who's having a little bit of fun at my expense, it's one of those fights where it does kind of surprise me because realistically to me, if you look at finishing abilities and different ways to finish, Oliveira's got to be the guy in this one, right?
It's just so hard to say because you basically have the best knockout puncher in the division's history against the best submission specialist in the division's history. So I think both guys have very good opportunity to win by stoppage. And with Poirier, though, he just has the better cardio in the matchup. I know Oliveira's thin, but I look at him almost like a Francis Ngannou type fighter where he's got that 2-round window to finish you, and then he will start to fade because he's not the most active guy on the feet. That's what you have to remember about Oliveira. All of his wins are by stoppage for a reason. Like, when heavyweights have this problem, everybody's like, oh, we don't know what their cardio is going to look like later. Oliveira is in that same boat. I know he has had 5-round fights, but they don't go 5 rounds. It's kind of the key. He's able to stop guys early, so we don't know what Oliveira's striking is going to look like in that 4th round, in the 5th round. I know Poirier can stay consistent and stay strong in the 4th and 5th round, and even stay a power puncher in those rounds too, so I do like Poirier for not only his lasting ability, but his knockout punches as well.
And it's very funny because 53% of the fans on Instagram have Dustin Poirier to get the win. Again, these Poirier wins were versus McGregor, who hasn't won since 2016, so on and so forth, B. Reed is saying, and his level of competition hasn't been so good. If you look at it for Charles Oliveira, the level of competition wasn't great until we get into the Ferguson fight, until we get into his last fight against Michael Chandler. So it is a lot of fun when you look at it that way. For me, I have Dustin Poirier. I think that his defensive grappling is something that helps him, especially in a fight like this. Working with, we talked about it earlier in the week, Mateusz Gamrot, a guy who's going to try and go for some wonky takedowns like Charles Oliveira will. Because if you think about it for Oliveira, I think Oliveira's takedown attempts and some of the fighters that we have lower on this card have similar ways. I mean, what's Gillian Robertson going to do if she fights Priscila Cachoeira?
Give him that bear hug.
It's going to be similar to a Charles Oliveira takedown. So a lot of fun. Alex Graham saying Matt versus Craig freestyle wrestling for 50K subs. We hit 29,000 today, so it's absolutely insane there. Thank you to everybody out there, same as everybody that hit us up with the big time question mark kicks, the super chats. So we really do appreciate that. But Matt, I see this one as such a close fight. If you're going either way, you're not a casual. For us, we got Poirier, and if we're wrong, we're wrong. And you can find us on the Fight Night Picks companion. That's going to be later on tonight. Matt, there's going to be so many good fights coming up tonight. While I get rid of all the graphics so we can go bottom to top one more time, what's the fight that you're most looking forward to here?
I really want to say the main event, but we've just spent the last 50 minutes talking about it. So I guess my underrated sort of fight of the night, and not underrated to us because I do think we have talked about it quite a bit, Josh Emmett Dana Ige is going to be a great fight. I know the featherweight division's got a lot of shine lately because when you're looking for fight night main events, honestly, the heavyweight division's not where you want to look. You want to look at welterweights, bantamweights, featherweights, lightweights. Guys that can go a very hard 5 rounds, and the featherweight division gets a lot of shine. There are a lot of featherweight 5-round fights, and this could be a 5-round fight between Dana Ige and Josh Emmett, and it would be a phenomenal one at that. So I think it's a fight that isn't getting the respect it deserves, but it'll be a great one.
Should be a great one for me. Again, it's Ige and Emmett, and then it's Munoz and Cruz. I think those are going to be great fights, and it just so happens that they're back-to-back. They can get you gassed up for that main card, and you can join us in that companion. So if you're having a lot of fun, join us over there, Matt. We'll go back down, bottom to top. Robertson taking on Cachoeira. Was there a switch of the pick and timeout? Ethan Schneider saying, you guys do well to control your disagreements as brothers. When they're disagreements, we just go into the next video.
Yeah.
You can't really hang your hat on getting too mad.
Sometimes he's right, sometimes I'm right. It happens.
It's wild. All right, so in this fight, Matt, Robertson, Cachoeira. I had Robertson at the start of the week. I have Robertson now. You had Cachoeira at the start of the week. You have
Robertson now. I just worry about the weight miss of Cachoeira and what her cardio is going to look like because of that weight miss. She's someone who hasn't been able to defend takedowns in the past, and even worse than that, hasn't been able to get up after she hasn't successfully defended those takedowns. Again, could she knock out Gillian Robertson? Of course she could. I wouldn't be surprised at all if she gets one of those standing TKO Macy Barber type knockouts, but I do think Robertson, if she's the fighter I think she can be, I'm gonna Mike Wilb on this, if she is who I think she can be, then she should win this one.
Yeah, Matt, in this one, listen, I've got Gillian Robertson. But it is tough. It really is. So if you really feel too much on this one,
I don't think Robertson's going to get in the top 15 though, if I'm being honest.
Nah. All right, Matt, we'll move into our next fight. Randy Costa's taking on Tony Kelley. I've got Randy Costa's one half the question mark kicks parlay in this one. I don't necessarily like the road to recovery for Tony Kelley. With that torn rotator cuff scares me off. And then the driving to the card, you lose a day of the week. And now he made weight, so there is that, but there's just too many red flags there, so I like Costa. I do.
Not a tall guy brag, but I'd be really stiff if I was in a car for a whole entire day. I could only, if you're Tony Kelley, wouldn't you just want to be at your best fight
Rick
week?
Grimes, maybe I'll wear the suit coming up on the companion. I do. That's what I do. That's how I do. Go ahead.
I'm not wearing one for 3 hours, Craig. Come on. Here's the thing. Tony Kelley has an opportunity to win this fight, but it really feels like they're bringing him in as an opponent to just sort of build back Costa up near the top 15 again.
Morgan Branch is in the chat wearing the shirt too. FNP Nation all the way from the Ontario. Matt, in this fight, both of us Costa here?
Yeah, I like Costa quite a bit.
All right, next one, we have I almost said Darrick Hall. Derek Minner taking on Ryan Hall.
Fighter, Craig.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. How crazy is that Frank Gore is going to fight Duran?
I think Deron Williams is going to win.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
He's way bigger.
Matt, in this fight, I've got Ryan Hall.
I like Ryan Hall too. This could be a weird fight no matter what happens, and people are probably going to be like, oh, you guys are stupid. And then Ryan Hall's going to probably do a really weird submission on Derek Minner and get the win. So yeah, I like Ryan Hall.
All right, Matt, next one. The funniest thing, Guani Whitecrow talking about the sweater. I got it from Matt for Christmas last year. He likes the Raptors though, so but I like the Celtics. Miranda Maverick taking on Erin Blanchfield. We're split on the pick here, right?
We are. I think Erin Blanchfield's just a superior wrestler, and I really do think that that's what's going to matter the most in this fight. Could Maverick get off really nice shots early on in the fight? Of course she can. I just think she will fade at a certain point, and I do think Blanchfield's the more steady fighter.
Blanchfield's a heck of a striker too. I have Maverick in this one, and I love the move of the camps.
I guess, can I just ask you one question? Do you like prospect versus prospect fights? Because I really do. I know a lot of people don't. They feel like it's, the young eating the young, but I really do okay, they can always rematch in the future. It's not like the UFC is against that, so I enjoy a prospect v prospect.
I'm fine with it, Matt. Our next one, we have the man himself, Andrea Muniz, and we have Eryk Anderson for MKR623. I meant to bring you back. I apologize, but just ripping on us so hard. Okay. Now, Matt, Andre Muniz taking on Eryk Anderson. This is another one I have it. Like, you pick either guy. You're not a casual for it. It's a really hard one to pick. I have Muniz because he has that Hall of Fame badge with his grappling, but I could see Eryk Anderson going out there, pushing a pace, not going for the takedown like Bartosz Fabinski did, and just really keeping things at range and picking up a win here, like Azamat Murzakanov did years ago.
He definitely could, but Muniz at least has a specialty in his game. If the fight goes to the mat for 1 second, I like his chances to win by submission, whereas Anderson is going to need a few shots to get done on the feet. He will need... Oddly enough, like, he will need his clinch game. He might need his wrestling at some point, primarily defensively, but still, Anderson's going to need to make this a mixed martial arts fight, and not just allow Muniz to shoot takedowns from across the cage against him, but I still do like Muniz.
All right, Matt, so both of us going with Muniz, but this one is a really, really tight one. Our next fight, we have Jordan Wright, Bruno Silva. I've got Silva here, but somebody's getting knocked out.
I think Silva knocks out Jordan Wright, and I think it's going to be gross.
Or you have Wright getting the knockout, both of us going with the man himself. Bruno Silva. In this one, I've got Augusto Sakai, who, to my surprise, is the underdog.
This is a weird fight where either guy could win in any way. Well, probably not submission via Tai Tuivasa, but you get the idea. If Tuivasa just bum rushes him, similar to Marcos Rogerio de Lima against Ben Rothwell, I wouldn't be surprised at all. He could do that.
How crazy was that?
Exactly. He could get that 30-second knockout. We'd be like, oh my goodness, he's so good. But I do think Sakai's the steadier fighter again, and I do think he's going to be more consistent. If this fight goes to the third round, Tai Tuivasa's hands are going to be by his knees. He's going to be throwing looping shots. At least Sakai will at least be able to put together a few shots on the outside if it does go later into the fight.
If we get the takedown early, you and Justin Franks, you're just going to be sitting there laughing, watching the TV. Matt, our next fight, we have Pedro Munoz, Dominic Cruz, and it was asked earlier, the old, do you guys switch picks very often? Not very often. Not very often. There might be one every week or so. I haven't this week. Matt switched 2. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm going to Pedro Munoz on this one. I think he's more likely to win by finish. I just don't think Dominic Cruz is the same fighter that we've seen in the past. And yes, being smart is enough to get you by a guy like Casey Kenny, but I think at a certain point those veteran tricks are going to run out. When you're fighting a guy like Pedro Munoz, who will be the same fighter in the first round that he is in the third round, I don't think you're just going to be able to sort of outthink your way to a win, which is really what Dominic Cruz is able to do against Casey Kenny. So I could see a world where Cruz is able to stay on his bike, be a smart fighter, and win this fight on points. But if you think anyone's getting a finish, it sort of has to be Munoz, and I think Munoz will be able to get it done.
I've got Cruz by decision, but I just like the fight to go to decision. I mean, if we're disagreeing on the pick, if this happens late in the week, again,
this is a close fight.
Decision's probably not a crazy one, because for Cruz, majority of his wins by decision. He's the greatest bantamweight of all time. For Pedro Munoz, yes, he does have plenty of finishes, but I see him having a hard time to put out Dominic Cruz.
The Dominic Cruz being the best bantamweight of all time is a weird one. I gotta be honest. It is. He was hurt too much.
Who is it? Henan Barao?
I don't know.
It could be. Josh Emmett taking on Dan Ige.
It's not as black and white as you're making it seem, though.
Josh Emmett, Dan Ige. I'm having a hard time here. Great fight, and it really is. I think it's lined interestingly because Josh Emmett off of tons of injuries, but if you look at it, I mean, he had a terrible, almost career-ending injury against Jeremy Stevens, came back and looked amazing. So he really does have a great opportunity. For me, I'm going with Dan Ige, but this is a tough one here.
I like Dan Ige too, just because he is the more active fighter in this, but that activity could come back to bite him. If he does stay in the pocket for a little bit too long and Josh Emmett lands one of those crazy left hooks like he did against Ricardo Lamas all the way back in the day that sort of put him on the map, then Dan Ige's not going to be able to eat that. I'm sorry. I know he was able to eat shots from, like, Edson Barbosa cracked him and probably should have won that fight. And he was able to eat some of those shots, but Josh Emmett has different kind of power. Like, when he puts you down, he puts you out. So it's a very dangerous fight for Dan Ige, but I think he'll be able to get it done.
We'll have to see how the injuries, even the spring in the recovery, make out for him. Sean O'Malley's taking on Howley and Paiva. We're going with Hype Train O'Malley.
I think O'Malley lights him up like a Christmas tree. I really do.
Choot, choot. All right, Matt. Next fight, Kai Kara-France, Cody Garbrandt. This is a really tough one. I've got Kai Kara-France, but if Garbrandt goes out there, knocks him out, and lays claim to a title shot, which he was supposed to have going down to 125, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight the winner of the trilogy for the belt.
It really does come down to his durability, though. Like, I agree with what you're saying, but let's say Garbrandt's chin is 20% worse than it was at bantamweight. I don't want to see him fight Deiveson Figueiredo. That would be really, really bad.
Wins, we won't see a check.
No, you're right. But you understand what I mean. Just like, I feel like 125 for the longest time was, they only win by decision. Have you seen, like, Pantoja and Moreno and Figueiredo fight? Like, these guys... Manel Kopp. Like, they bang, bro, as Julian Lane would say. So Garbrandt, he's going to have good power in this division. I just don't think it's going to be this astronomical difference like a lot of other people will or do think, but I think Cachoeira France will be able to win.
I take the under on this one. I think it's going to be a great fight. I've got Ponzinibbio as the second leg of the question mark kicks parlay. If you go with him and Randy Costa and Amanda Nunes is plus 220 without Nunes, plus 190 if you think those odds are too baked. But yeah, for me here, I've got Ponzinibbio. It's a close fight. It's a ballsy call on old Craig Allen's end.
And this is another one that could be a 5-round fight. Like, if they did Ponzinibbio versus Jeff Neal, I guess not now. There might not be as much hype for it. But a year ago, I would have been fired up for this being a main event of a fight night card. And these are two guys who could go 5 rounds, so I'm not really worried about either guy's cardio in this matchup. But what I will say is that Ponzinibbio invests a lot more in those strikes that add up over time. He is a great leg kicker. He will go to the body. And I do think that's going to matter against a guy like Jeff Neal, who relies on his footwork so much, especially moving in and out of the pocket. So I do like Ponzinibbio in this matchup, but it's a risky one to put money on. I'm not going to lie.
It is risky, so just pump the brakes a little bit, but that is what I have, and a lot of people with Jeff Neal in the comments section. Our next fight, I've got Amanda Nunes.
I think Nunes can knock out Payne. Like, I'm sorry, but if Nunes ran a poll on her Instagram that was like, when do you want me to win and how do you want me to win, she'd probably be able to do it.
Charles Oliveira taking on Dustin Poirier. Both of us with Dustin Poirier here, but again, the fights on this card are so great. You guys are so great, especially with all the super chats. One of the biggest shows we've ever had, which is crazy. But Matt, in this fight, I mean, it's such a good one. You've got Poirier, you've got Oliveira. They have finishing abilities. If this went to a decision, it could be a fight of the year contender. There's so many things going on in this fight. I absolutely love it.
I think this is a phenomenal fight for the lightweight title. Both good guys, oddly enough. I know that's a weird thing to say, but you'd hate to see either guy lose just because they do seem to do a lot of good in their communities. But I do think Poirier's going to be able to get it done. The thing about Oliveira, though, is he's so tricky in every aspect. Like, he doesn't just do jiu-jitsu. He's in every position at once on the ground. Like, that's how dangerous of a fighter he is. So Poirier's going to be at his peak to win this fight, but I do think he'll be able to.
Alex Fox, we appreciate you. And listen, you get the word out there. The show's been amazing, and it really is all thanks to everybody out there. You guys really are the oil and the cogs. You guys are really making everything move. So, yeah, we really do appreciate you. And make sure you check it out. The Fight Night Picks Companion. It's us. We don't have our pals, and there's no booze necessarily, but we're going to have a lot of fun, and it should be a great card. This main card's amazing. Heck, I'm looking forward to the prelims as much as I am the main card.
This is a phenomenal card. Like, we've got, 4 hours to get ready for the next one, but I couldn't be more excited. It's going to be great.
Should be great, so hopefully you can catch us over there. Hit the sub and the like if you can. If you can, it's appreciated. Matt, I'm loving this card. I think it's going to be a great one. Listen, keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.